America, we gotta get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, welcome this Friday. Former Congressman Joe Walsh with you. Hope you've all had a good week. Couple housekeeping things out of the way right now. There you see it. No kings, no kings, no kings, no kings in America. As always, if you want to join the No Kings movement, go to oneflaginitiative.org. That's all one word, oneflaginitiative.org. Sign up and join the No Kings movement. You want to shoot me an email about anything, feel free, as always. The Social Contract with Joe Walsh at gmail.com. Again, all one word, The Social Contract with Joe Walsh at gmail.com. I've been dying to have this conversation. You know how I feel about Trump. We all talk to each other about what's going on in America right now. We've all got our take on Trump, Trumpism, America, what America is right now, how America's changed. I wanted to get the perspective of someone who's not here in America. And I came across a piece a few weeks ago that I read that just moved the hell out of me on Substack, and I'm going to ask you to follow her on Substack. The title of the piece was Grief for the America I Knew. And I read this piece, and it made me sit back and made me take another long, hard look at how America under this president has changed. So I wanted to invite the author of that piece on this podcast because I have so much I want to ask her. Let me introduce my guest today, Elsa Hefez. Elsa, did I pronounce your last name for me?
Yeah, correct. Hefez. Yeah.
Hefez, I got it. Ambassador at the UK Refugee Council. She's a citizen of the United Kingdom. She's a Brit. Elsa, welcome. You and I have spoken. It's great to be with you. You and I have spoken briefly. I just adored the piece you wrote a few weeks ago, and the title grabbed me, and then the piece really grabbed me. Grief for the America I Knew. Let's start here. What compelled you to write this piece?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because it sort of barely started. I could already see some comments coming on the right.
By the way, Elsa, life is grand when you just ignore the comments. So just.
But this is actually, it's so relevant because this is exactly it. You know what? I went to America the first time when I was like 12 years old, and I loved it instantly. I love Americans. I do. I think I still think they're the best people. I think they are incredibly welcoming.
Elsa, why do you say that? Because you've said that before. Like Americans are the best people. What makes us that?
Well, do you know what? I the first time I went, I was as an exchange student. I'm British, but I'm also half French, so I have dual nationality. And I at the time I lived in France, and I went as an exchange student to a tiny town in Maryland, and I was welcomed as if I was part of the family. I went to go to an American school where I say it in the piece that I wrote, I got to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. And I just loved it. I love the patriotism. I love this real pride in the country. And we don't have that so much, I think, in Europe. You have a little bit of pride, but it's not, I think that patriotism has become this really negative concept of like almost like if you're patriotic, then you obviously hate the rest of the world. And I didn't feel like that at all. I felt incredibly welcome. I love that everybody had a different skin color wherever you went. Everybody was different, came from somewhere else. And it reminded me a bit of home. My father was a refugee from Egypt, and I've grown up with all sorts of nationalities in my home, and I felt so welcome. And then the first time a few years later, I got a job working in New York in a New York hot kitchen, and I just really, that's really when I fell in love with America, because I loved that I had a guy from Honduras on the right and somebody from Guatemala on the left, and Americans in the midst, and everybody was just
How old were you then, Elsa? How old were you then when you moved to New
probably
York City?
18.
Okay.
Yeah. And I loved it. I loved that you could just, the ethos was, if you work hard, you can do well. And I love that. It was like, it doesn't matter what your background is. If you want to work hard, you're going to do well. And I studied politics at university, and I studied specifically, interestingly, the relations between America and Russia, which is so interesting because, back in the day, Putin was already in power, which seems crazy to me because it was like, I have to admit, about 20 years ago. And he was already in power then, and that was against Bush. And like, at the time we thought, God, it's not going to get any worse than Bush. and yeah, it's quite interesting how the world has changed. And I guess I feel really sad for the rhetoric now of, you're either with Trump or you're against Trump. And there's just never a conversation. And even I see it right now when I'm talking to you, and I see these like messages come through of hatred. And it's just, it's sad, because like nobody can have a conversation or understanding anymore. That's just,
Well, that's it.
You're with me or you're against me. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no, can we have a conversation about it? It's just, that's it. You're with us or you're against us. Yeah.
Elsa, spot on. And we're at such a scary point in America right now, where we've always treated each other like, you're my political opponent, but now it's like, you're my enemy. If you disagree with me, you're my enemy and I hate you. And that can lead to political violence. But for everybody listening to us, this has always been a country that you've loved and admired and learned shit from. Like, you've learned stuff from America.
So much. I had the strongest mentors, in my life are American, but my best friends are American. I still speak to people every day out there, and I still think they're the hardest working people I know. Like, I still think you have to work twice as hard to succeed in America. And when you do, what I remember is, if you do succeed, people are proud of you. They tap you on the back. They say, way to go. Whereas, in France, which was always a little bit more left-wing historically, like if you did well, people judged you a little bit more. And people want to succeed in America. And I think that's a great thing. You work hard, you do well. Like, that's how the world should be.
Amen. And so, amen to all of that. And that's what I've always loved about living here. And so, but then, okay, so with all of that as a pretext, you then 3 weeks ago write this piece titled "Grief for the America I Knew." Mm-hmm. Explain that. Let's start there. Explain that title. Explain what was going through your mind then, as someone who spent time here as a younger person, loved this country, still loves this country.
Yeah, I mean, what I found really hard, that I guess the catalyst for writing the article was the I mean, frankly, disgraceful moment in the Oval Office where Trump sort of attacked Zelensky. That was, to me, the catalyst for just shock and horror. I grew up with grandparents who had, lived through the Holocaust, who were Jewish, who, by the way, to this day, everybody's grateful to the Americans. Like, nobody says, oh, the Americans didn't save our ass in Normandy. Yes, you did. And we're really grateful for it. And I think sometimes people are like, especially the last few days where they said, oh, if it wasn't for us, the French would be speaking Germans. Yeah, we would. That we know this. Like, this is why we're so grateful to America. There's no question about it.
And I'm so glad you said that, Elsa. And I want everybody listening to hear that. That you are still, and Europeans are still so grateful for what America did in World War II. But Trump's press secretary comes out and says, only because of America.
Yeah.
If not only, you'd be speaking German. Fuck
Yeah.
that. A lot of other people, right?
Yeah.
The Allied forces involved a lot of countries.
Yeah. And so those of us who grew up with grandparents who lived through that, we were told the stories of war, and we were told the stories of the horrors of the Second World War and the importance of America as an ally. Like like for me, America, signified democracy and diplomacy more than anything. Like they're our allies. They're the big strong ally that's going to defend us against the bad guys. The bad guys being Russia, and Iran and China. And now it's like, wait, what happened? Why are we now helping the Russians? Like it's crazy. Like,
is it, Elsa, to you, to your background and your education, and obviously diplomacy is a really important thing for you. When someone like me says, as an American, oh my God, my president is on the side of Putin. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things, but that's how I feel. React to that.
that's how we feel, because I mean, I don't know what the press is showing these days in the US, but there is no gray area as to what happened between Ukraine and Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign, independent nation that was invaded. I mean, it's crazy to think about this in 2020, something. It was invaded and its people killed in the street. And in case anybody watching thinks this is not true, it's not a real story. It's a real story. We had Ukrainians living with us when the war started. We took in a family that moved in with us. So I can tell you for a fact that this happened, and they had bombs falling on their heads and on their streets. And, it's it should not be open for debate. Like, a country that is invading another country is declaring war. Ukraine hasn't done anything. So to then have the leader of this country that's trying to free its people and reclaim their land and defending themselves go into the most powerful man's office, in the world, and say, please, can you help us, and be treated like a stable boy is just, it's not acceptable. It's bullying, and it's such a simple concept, but why are the bullies winning? Like, it's exactly what America taught us not to do, not to celebrate this sort of tyranny.
Oh, I think that's really interesting you said that, because that's very poignant. You're right. This is not what America has always taught. Standing with the bullies. Elsa, that meeting in the White House happens. Trump and Vance bully Zelensky. How did Europe react to that meeting?
Strongly, actually. I will say that Europe, that's been fairly divided over the last few years, is now stronger and more united than ever. Actually, it's brought us much closer together. It's made us very much rethink our defense spending, because, I think if you live in America and you don't care what happens in Europe, you just think, who cares about Ukraine, right? It's a tiny little country. But Ukraine is just one neighboring country of Russia that Putin wants to invade. That's not where he's going to stop. Then he's going to go to Moldova. He's going to go to Sweden. He's going to go to Finland. He's going to, he's not going to stop there. This is what people don't understand. And that's why NATO is meant to be, that's why NATO is so important. That's why the US being part of NATO is so important. And
that's what, Elsa, that's what Americans don't understand. And that's why I think it's so helpful to hear this from a European. Like, this is a real threat. What you just said right there, that's the prevailing view. Like, hell yes, Putin wants Ukraine, and hell yes, he's not going to stop with that.
And that's why things like, ironically, the whole debate about the Department of Education being dismantled, this is why it's so bad, because it's history. It's learning history that teaches you these lessons so that you don't repeat them. That's the point. And so when people stop caring about history, when people stop caring what happened, less than 100 years ago, they forget that, hey, this can come back around. Like, another world war is probably going to happen again in our lifetime. And And we have to be ready for that. Sadly, I wish we didn't, but we probably do. And if it's against America, I mean, it just seems crazy to me. Yeah.
So help me with this, and maybe you disagree with me on this. So a bad guy, an evil guy, invades a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, America and France and
Yeah.
the free world and NATO, like, we're not like mediators between these two countries. We're on the side of the sovereign nation that was invaded. And I know there are people in America who think America should somehow be a mediator between Putin and Ukraine. I would say, hell no, we're on the side of Ukraine. They were invaded. Russia, get out. But now we're in this weird, scary place where the American president, so America for now, he's not even trying to be a mediator. He's on the other side, like he's with Putin. Is that too extreme? Do you think? That's how I feel.
I don't think it's too extreme. I mean, it's really interesting that Trump has said multiple times before he was elected this time around, he said, when I come in, the war will be over in 24 hours. Like, how many times I heard that statement many times. Well, it's been more than 24 hours. It hasn't finished yet. And there was this sort of glimpse of him. There was a moment where I think I thought maybe there's some diplomacy hiding behind there that we don't see, that he's going to have this conversation with Putin and then the war will end. And actually, do you know what? At the end of the day, if the war ends and people's lives are saved, then, maybe that's worth it. Like, I'm willing to swallow my ego for that. But that's not what happened. I'm going to take all the minerals and the land that, maybe I can negotiate with Putin. And Putin is not gaining respect for America in the process. I think this is the thing that people need to remember. This is not, oh, wow, what a show of force from Trump and what a great nation America is. That's not how Putin thinks. Like, I think he's he's like a dictator. Like, there's no, you can't have a conversation with that. There is no mediation possible from anyone, and Trump included. So all it's doing is actually, I think, and obviously this is my opinion, it's reducing the power that America has, because America is more powerful with its allies. Everybody's more powerful with allies. It's a basic human concept. You got more people with you, you're more likely to, beat the bully. If you're by yourself, then what? Like, will America do better in the long run? Politically, economically, it's not. I don't think politically it will, but obviously that's far into the future. And so, how much? Yeah.
Elsa, give me the European perspective. So what we've got here is, on one side, we've got a sovereign nation that, by the way, Ukraine has been moving toward joining the free world. But we've got a sovereign nation, we've got NATO, we've got the free world on one side, and we've got Putin, a dictator, the aggressor, on the other side. Does Europe recognize, and this saddens me to say it, that right now, with him in the White House, America is not on the side of NATO, the free world, and Ukraine. America is on the side of the dictator.
Absolutely. That is exactly how the Europeans are perceiving it. If you look at the media, I mean, newspapers, magazines, there's this very famous art magazine in France called Le Point, which is the equivalent of The Economist, I guess. And there was a very famous picture 2 weeks ago of, front cover Trump, and the title said L'homme de Moscou, which means the man from Moscow. And so it's considered now that he is an ally of Trump. And actually, they did a sort of Europe-wide poll a few days ago that just came out asking sort of the main nations, so Germany, Italy, France, and the UK, how they felt. Do they feel safer or do they feel less safe with Trump in the White House? And I think so. Germany said 74% less safe, The UK said 78%, France at 69%. So you know what I mean? That's a big number that think we are now less safe. Europe is less safe because of these decisions.
Elsa, and I know you know America's a big country. There are so many of us. I mean, America right now, because of Trump, is not on the side of the good. And that just pains so many of us. But does that like shock Europe? We're not on the side of the good. America.
I mean, does it shock us?
Maybe not shock.
Well, and I think we're all shocked, frankly, that we're all shocked. In Europe, a majority, I'm not going to speak for everyone because lots of people would disagree with me. A lot of us are shocked that he was voted in the first time, but we're really double shocked that it's happened again. And it's, I think people talk about us liberals and how we get on our high horses and we make statements, and I'm about to make another one, but I really thought that we got to a point where certain things like racism, basic human rights, like healthcare rights, reproductive rights, positive immigration. I don't mean opening borders and letting everybody in. That's not what we mean. We just mean incorporating other nations into our own and welcoming them in. Like, all of these things should be a non-negotiable, should be something that we don't have to think about anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've moved past that. And then I feel just like a lot of people feel like it's just moved backwards. Like, suddenly women's rights are taken away, and departments of education, like things that are just, they should be so ingrained into the constitution and basic for people. For us, it feels archaic. For like the French and the British and the Germans, and I'm not saying we get it all right, but we definitely know that, yeah, basic things like that are part of your day-to-day. Why are you taking them away? It just feels like you're moving backwards.
Well, what's Elsa, what's fascinating about that, and that's the topic for another day, because our notion of our Constitution and our notion of freedoms is very different than the typical European's notion of freedoms. I've always been fascinated by that conversation. But you wrote on February 28th, 2025, in this piece, I witnessed the death of America. You wrote that after you watched this meeting with Zelensky and Trump in the White House, and you wrote your piece, and I could just feel how painful it was to write this piece, the grief for the America I knew. But to say that, I witnessed the death of America. Explain that. Describe that.
In that moment, I'm watching, like, let me kind of set the scene. I'm watching it live on, I think it was, I don't know, CNN or something. Yeah. And I'm watching this moment of naively, even though I've never been a fan of Trump, I'm naively watching Zelensky walk into the Oval Office, a man with, I think, who's behaved with so much dignity throughout this war. And he comes in and he sits down and he sits in front of what he thinks is his biggest ally, and does thank them. I'll argue that to my grave, that he did thank all of them on the way in for their repeated
and he's
support.
Thanked us repeatedly,
like, really, he thanks this the whole time. Anyway, and he comes in and he sits down, and obviously he explains what's going on, and obviously JD Vance goes into this rant. Some random guy in the back, who's, by the way, basically a Russian journalist, says, why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? And he, and like, the whole thing becomes this classroom bullying moment where they just attack a leader of a nation. Like, this is an elected president of a sovereign nation. And in that moment, like, every notion that I had about America, about freedom and democracy, and as I said before, diplomacy and kindness, and I just thought, it's gone. It's gone. And I was like, all these things that I love about it is gone. And I'm not past thinking it's never coming back. I'm hoping it is. But I just don't understand how you explain to young children, if you're telling them about the world that we live in, how do you explain to them, hey, the really mean bully is going to win. Like the really nice guy who's being bullied, like we're now going to
Well,
move him out of the picture, and the bully is going to win. How do you teach
well,
that to like
well,
your next generation?
Elsa, how do you teach to your children that we elected a bully? I mean, and I said this on some show yesterday, and I love to say this every week or two to remind people, especially people who voted for him, Donald Trump is everything we teach our children not to be. Not to be. And he is a bully. And all bullies, by the way, I believe are cowards. But yeah, I mean, how do you explain to your kids that we're on the side of the bully right now, the bad guy? Well, I suppose it's easy to explain that to your kids when you then have to explain to your kids, we've got a bully in the White House. I mean, we have the same kind of guy in the White House. That's what makes this so tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like it's putting on a pedestal, not just a bully, but like it's cool to like not read, and it's cool to not understand history, and it's cool to not be part of unity with the rest of the world. It's just cool to be our own mean like nation. And I don't get that. I find that we've in Europe find it really hard. Find it really hard.
Well,
It's disgraceful to our ancestors who died in the war, for this freedom of expression everybody goes on about all day, freedom of expression. Okay, guess why you have that? You have that because people before you fought for those freedoms.
yeah.
And now you think that you're getting freedom of expression, but you're not. Right now, it's only because the person in the White House agrees with you that you think you've got the freedom to speak. But the moment you're going to change your mind or disagree with something, that's when the freedom is taken away. Like, and you can see him, he's taking away basic press freedom. Like that should, like, you can hate Biden, you can hate Obama, you can hate all of them for whatever, but they allowed people that disagree with them in the room to at least ask questions, to at least hold them accountable for their decisions. And I don't think people understand the long-term repercussions of what it's like to limit the free press and limit, institutions that keep, democracy in place. And
Well,
it's very scary.
and you've got what, JD Vance, what was in Germany, wherever, a month and a half ago, and he's lecturing the Europeans about their free speech issues. Oh my God! Every day, Donald Trump and JD Vance and Elon Musk are wanting to imprison people or jail people for what they say. So, yeah, Trump and his folk really don't understand or appreciate free speech. It's like we live in a populist moment right now. I think in America and around the world. I come from a populist world. One of the negative aspects of populism is all elites suck. Like it's a backlash against elites, smart people, experts.
Yeah.
And so we say they all suck. And we don't care about truth or facts or history anymore. It's all bullshit. You can't believe any of it. So we throw basic information and truth out the window in this attack against elites and experts, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. And now, unfortunately, people are getting their news from social media, and you don't have a check on that. You don't know whether what you're reading is true or not. If you've learned enough about history, and you can sort of fact check it yourself, but it's really hard. And I do feel bad for people who honestly have been duped into thinking that they're going to have more money in their pocket, that their kids are going to be better off, because they won't see it right now. And they're like, oh, when are the prices of eggs coming down? Listen, it's not, yes, okay, that's important. You need to feed your kids, but what about when your daughter, when she's 21, might need an abortion and that's not an option? Or when your federal job goes away and things like that are happening so quickly under their eyes. And yeah.
Do you, Elsa, I ask you, and then I'm always asking, do you, Elsa, do you distinguish between Trump and the American people, or has that distinction blurred?
It's a good question. I think it's a bit that it's the slightly same answer as before. I think people who only read or get their information through social media will associate all Americans as being Trump fans. Like they'll just say, "Oh, this is America. They voted for him. To hell with them." But no, there's a huge amount of people who are extremely sad for the majority of Americans who, and there are so many Americans that are shocked. I mean, it's not like nobody voted for Kamala. It's a hell of a lot of millions of people that are now, really disappointed and really shocked. But if I guess the question is, have we slightly lost a little bit of respect for the nation? Yeah, if you read the majority of the press and you listen to what people are saying, then yes, we have, and it's really sad, especially when you have people like, yeah, Elon Musk coming in, and it's funny. Well, no, it's not funny that it's America, but it's exactly what happens in Russia. This is like oligarchs taking over. And I think people don't understand what that means. When you have somebody with lots of money who is unelected, who's coming in and making decisions for you and how it affects your life, that's not a democracy. That is not how democracies work. And I think the problem is people think, oh, but he's made so much money, he's a successful guy, therefore that's gonna have a positive impact on me eventually. That's just not
Elsa,
how
it's interesting. You and I differ politically on probably most issues. I come from the right, and I'll acknowledge that I think the right in America, sadly, is much more predisposed to embrace authoritarianism, to embrace a strong man. Look, I think the left in America, they have their issues and their problems. But coming from the right like I do, it always makes me sad. I think the right is much more susceptible to embracing a strong man or a dictator. And I think that's a big part of what's going on with Trump. What do you think about that?
I mean, yes, I think that's naturally a slightly more right-wing view, I would say, than Democrat, although, the parties work slightly differently in the UK. I think the issue is that the right has gone so much further right, the left has gone so much further left, and there just isn't, just no one's allowed to be in the center anymore. You're not allowed to be a little bit center left or a little bit center right. You have to pick one or the other. And
two
the
parties,
extremes are
only
so
two parties.
Exactly. And it's sort of what happens to those of us in the middle. And you said you and I are potentially a little bit opposed, but yes and no, because yes, I would say I'm center left, and it kind of depends on what policies, because I think the best economies are the ones who have, a bigger free market rather than anything with more socialism. However, this is the issue, and this is the issue we're having in the UK at the moment. Like, everybody's really polar opposite. We've got the Reform Party, which is Nigel Farage, which is, loves kissing Trump's ass. This is any occasion he has, and that he's hoping to be prime minister. And if he is, it would be a total disaster for our country. And
do you have in the UK, Elsa, do you have the same us versus them, this dynamic going on?
Yeah, absolutely. We thought maybe it'd be a little bit different when our last prime minister, Keir Starmer, was elected, and we thought, okay, he's a bit more central, and maybe that'll unite people, but it hasn't. It's anybody who voted for him who were more left are saying he's not left enough, and anybody in the right saying he's too far to the left. And I mean, frankly, I don't know who would be in politics in this day and age, because you can't. No, but you can't get it right, can you? There's no way to have a conversation where it's positive. Even if the result is good for people, you're gonna be hated. And I've seen this in it's the same in France. Everybody hates Macron at the moment. In Italy, they've elected, Meloni, who is really far right, in my opinion. I did scarily so. And we're all becoming increasingly nationalistic in a way that is sort of like, let's close the borders, let's not let people in. It's all the immigrants' fault. That's always the answer to everything is, it's the immigrants' fault. They're coming in, they're taking our jobs, they're the ones doing all the crime.
They're eating your cats and dogs.
They're eating the cats and dogs. Exactly. That's the easy answer. It's not our fault. We didn't do anything wrong. These guys did something wrong.
Elsa, does Europe understand sufficiently that as long as he's in the White House, Europe's on their own?
I think we're just starting to understand that. Yeah,
Really?
we're just starting to understand that. I think nobody wants to cut ties with America. England, less than anyone. But the special relationship, as we've always called it, between the UK and the US is something that is ingrained to us. It's something that's really important. And I think obviously Sir Keir is trying to be as diplomatic as possible. He's invited him for a state visit. Whether or not that will happen, because this was pre-Zelensky debacle, I don't know. But we are realizing that we need to be much closer in as a united Europe. And in fact, it says, this poll said that Europe has not been this close since like the 60s or something. So we're really sort of rallying together and saying, yeah, we're going to have to increase defense spending. We're going to have to make sure that we are prepared for anything else without America.
You would make a much better diplomat than I would, Elsa. And so I say this as an American who abhors Donald Trump. If I were a European leader right now, I would give America the middle finger. I would say, Trump, screw you. You're with I was about to say Stalin. You're with Putin. You're not on the side of the free world. Well, we're not going to pander to you. We're not going to bow to you, Donald. Screw you. America, we love you, but forget you guys right now. We're on our own. I'd give America the middle finger. I know that's probably the stupidest thing to do, but if I were a European leader, I'd give Trump the middle finger. Screw you. You picked your side.
It's hard. It's hard because you don't want to let go of these global institutions like NATO and the UN. You want to believe that we are all stronger together, and we also don't know who's going to come after Trump. I mean, unless there's a Trump 3.0, you never know. I've seen crazier things in the last few years, but we don't know who's going to come back next. And just in the same way, there was an extremely negative, Brexit vibe in the UK a few years ago. As time goes by and we thought we'd be so cool by ourselves and stronger economically, our economy is tanked. We're in so much trouble in the UK. And so people are realizing now, they're like, shit, maybe we are better as part of a union, as part of, with better trade agreements and safer borders. So does the rest of Europe want to give the middle finger? No, I think we kind of want to take the high horse a little bit and say, you know what, we're going to help this nation that is in need right now, and hopefully we can behave a little bit better rather than almost like, stoop down to his level. But I if it continues the way it does, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if he goes on to tries to get Greenland and stuff, I can tell you that Europe is not going to not do anything. That's
America, I have loved you, you wrote. So many of us have, but now you are on your own. You wrote that a few weeks ago. You feel that way. You're on your own, America.
I do. Yeah. At the moment, I think, you know what, we're just going to have to focus, as I said, on Europe, on Canada, on Australia, on, on Asia. We have lots of, amazing trade deals that can happen there. And hopefully, it works great for us. But yeah, I think that the overwhelming sentiment is, you want to keep electing somebody like that, then you're just going to have to be on your own, because the rest of us we still believe in the free world and free speech. And
so this is what I utterly adored about your piece, because in a way, this was you from over there grieving because the America you've always loved and admired is like dying before your eyes. But you ended your piece with, okay, America, you may be gone, you may be on your own, but everything you taught me and everything I learned from you, I'm going to keep fighting for. Like you've got these wonderful stuff, Elsa. You said, the America I loved may be dying, but I will not let its values die with it. And then you said this that I just love. You said, but if there is one thing that America has taught me, it is to stand up and fight for what is right. America taught me that democracy is not inherited, it is defended. that freedom is not given, it is earned, that silence in the face of oppression is complicity. And everybody listening to us, this is stuff that you've always admired about and learned from America. I'm going to defend democracy and freedom. I'm going to defend what's right. I'm going to fight for these things. So even if I'm no longer, even if America is doing whatever, like you're still going to take that stuff, what America taught you, and fight for what's right. I just loved that.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I believe that. And I still believe that most Americans feel that way. I still believe that, all these people that I worked with and, those defining years when you're sort of early 20s and it's your first kind of jobs, this freedom of opportunity that seemed to be given to anyone was just so, I mean, it was really shaping, like it shaped me, and the fact that I always want to work really hard and give everybody that, that equal opportunity. And I mean, we talk about make America great again. This was the America that I thought was great. That was to me the great America. Like, was everything perfect? No, but the fact that you could work alongside people from all different nations, like the whole melting pot of America, and you had the freedom of opportunity, and you had the same opportunity to succeed. I want to take that with me. I take that with me everywhere I go, and in what I do now. And I think if you give people the best chance, they're gonna,
And that's how what you said is, and I think this is reflective, hopefully, of how Europe feels. If America will not be on the side to support Ukraine and freedom and sovereignty, too bad. That sucks, but I'm going to continue to fight for freedom and sovereignty and Ukraine and NATO. I got that in your piece. My hope is that that's how Europe feels.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we're lucky that we don't, we don't have the same situation that you have in the US, which is our democratic institutions are pretty good at listening to us. And so, we can actually go and try and speak to our, our local MP or whatever, even if it's about another country. We're still, we still get to go out there and say, what, we're concerned about what's going on, on the other side of the world, and you still can have your voice heard, and you can have healthy debates. And even though, as I said, the political shift means that views are more extreme, you can still have conversations that are fairly pleasant.
Hey,
I would say.
Last question, Elsa, and thank you for this. You came here as a 12-year-old exchange student, correct? You fell in love with this country. Are you, I'll say, bearish or bullish? Are you optimistic, pessimistic on this great, almost 250-year-old experiment in democracy? Are you optimistic or pessimistic on America kind of surviving?
I'll tell you what bothers me a bit at the moment is that I thought, again, I wrote this piece when the Zelensky debacle happened. And I thought when that happened, every Democrat would be out on the street screaming and saying,
you and me
enough
both
of this. And unless it's not being reported, I'm not seeing any of that. So I thought when that happened, I thought that's got to be the catalyst for change. That's got to be the moment where everybody's up in arms and out in the street and protesting. But I think for the first time, people are stunned by just the dismantling of the America that they knew. So
it's a tough call. It's a tough call for you.
So I do think it's a tough call. It's a tough call because I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to get worse before it gets better. That's what I think. And I don't want to think that because I'm, I want to believe that, again, the good guy comes around. But I think the danger of Donald Trump is, and who he surrounded himself by, there's a real danger that your democratic institutions are going to be irreversibly damaged. You know, he could take it much further than what we're seeing now. And people always joke about, oh, it's like the Handmaid's Tale. That's not a crazy thought. Like, okay, you might not be all walking around in, you know, red robes, but in terms of your freedom of movement and speech and all of that, like, you just don't know how far he can take it. He's interested in power, and the more power he has, the happier he is. And it could get quite bad. I hope it doesn't, because I do believe in the good American people, and I think there's so many of you out there. But there needs to be more movement. There needs to be more action.
What I appreciated about that is it wasn't easy for you to articulate how you felt, which tells me that was a real honest answer. You're torn. And I think that's the best perspective. Elsa, thank you so much. Elsa Hefez. By the way, subscribe to her Substack, Elsa Hefez, Hefes. I'll promote her. I'll promote it. Subscribe to her Substack. She puts out wonderful, wonderful stuff. My favorite Brit. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Be brave.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with